Sat, thanks again for getting that turkey thawed this week.
Thanks. It turned out great. Real happy with the results.
Excellent. So tell us what you did. Tell us about the technique you used.
Awesome. So again, today's Friday, and Tuesday night I took the 7-pound turkey that was frozen solid out of the freezer and put it in a 3-gallon cooler.
Perfect.
And then Wednesday I took it and checked on it, and it was still pretty crunchy, like really still frozen. And I took 2 gel packs and put them in the cooler.
And what was the point of the gel packs?
To keep a consistent temperature, because as that turkey starts to warm up and defrost, that cooler is going to get warmer and warmer.
Perfect.
And if I put those gel packs in, it's going to keep that same consistent temperature and make it so that it's exactly what we're looking for.
Gotcha.
When I checked in it this morning, it was just how I wanted it to be. The gel packs themselves were half thawed, and the turkey was completely thawed.
Oh, I can't wait to put this thing. Can't wait to put this thing on the smoker. So,
it's gonna be great.
All right. So you said you have a 7-pound turkey breast, and we have a 3-gallon cooler.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if we're feeding a little bit more people, right? We're feeding a bigger turkey breast, more family, whatever's coming over. What do we do?
Well, ideally, you're going to want to keep your turkey breasts to a more reasonable size, somewhere around 10, maybe 15 pounds tops for the turkey. But if you're going to do that, you have a couple options.
Okay.
I would suggest 1 of 3 options. You can, 1, get a bigger cooler.
Simple. Get a bigger cooler.
And then you're going to just still do the same technique, same method, add some gel packs.
Okay.
2, you can use a refrigerator. We've found, we've looked it up in a little bit of trial and error, that for every 5 pounds of a turkey, 24 hours for each of those 5 pounds, and it'll thaw.
Perfect.
I've had some issues with that. I think part of it is that you have to know what that internal temperature of your refrigerator is. And some people's refrigerators are going to run a little warmer, a little bit colder.
Sure.
And that's going to have its own issues.
Sure.
Likewise, who's got enough room? If you're going to have a few more people over,
right.
Who's got room in their refrigerator?
Right. Somebody's got mashed potatoes, we got corn, we got everything else involved. So.
Exactly, which is the reason why I love doing the cooler method, because I haven't used any refrigerator space.
Perfect.
Which is fantastic.
Perfect.
And then the third option, if you're really in a little bit more of a hurry, is use a sink.
Okay.
Now that's a little more challenging method.
Okay.
Because what you need to happen is that it's really the same. Dropping that turkey in a sink full of water is the same as a glass of water with some ice in it.
Okay.
That when you drop that big turkey into the sink, you have to have the right volume of water. No different than if you fill up a glass with water and drop an ice cube.
Right, you don't want that ice cube sticking out over the top of that water, right?
Absolutely.
You need it fully submerged?
Fully submerged.
Okay.
And you're also going to want to make sure it's enough water so that it's giving it the right surface area so that it's consistently cooling or warming that bird to the temperature that you're seeking.
So you said warm bird, so hot water?
No, that's a terrible idea. You're going to start cooking your bird if you do that. So you want to make it so it's the cold. You're going to let your cold water run for just a little bit and then fill the sink.
Okay.
And because that water is going to start to warm up, I would check on it every couple of hours and then drain the water and add new fresh water to it.
So why cold water? I get we're cooking it if it's warm and things like that, but wouldn't it be faster?
It'd be a lot faster, but then you're running the risk of bacterial growth and food poisoning that we're just not.
No, we want to enjoy the turkey. We want
to make sure that we don't have any sick people and we have the best turkey possible.
Perfect.
But that method is challenging. I do that pretty often with pork tenderloin sometimes.
Sure.
That's but they have to be something that's in a vacuum sealed bag. That's really essential. If you're just dropping something that's like in a Ziploc bag, you're running a risk. You're running a risk that potentially there might be a hole in it, a pinhole that you don't know, and next thing you know, you have water inside of.
This is the technique. You get home from the office, you realize you want to have a chicken breast for dinner that night,
Yep.
and hey, I got 2 hours. Throw it in the sink, and it's ready in 2 hours for one little chicken breast, something like that. Not for a big turkey.
Exactly.
You're going to plan ahead for something like this.
Completely agree. I'll do that same thing with vacuum sealed packages of bratwurst or Italian sausage that I'll get. I know it's a good vacuum sealed thing. It's only about a pound of meat. Drop it in the cool water. An hour later, I have very thawed meat for throwing in the grill.
Perfect.
Which is great.
Hey, perfect. Turkey's thawed. What's next?
Now we got to decide how we're going to season it. That's its own challenges.
I love every seasoning. So you tell me, what are we putting on it?
I do too. I have some specific things that I tend to like. Something that's a little salty and a little herby.
Okay.
Or things that are a little bit salty and a little bit spicy.
Okay.
And I think with this turkey, we're gonna choose to go with a little bit of salt, a little bit of spice, and a little bit of herb.
My mouth's already watering, so keep going. What's next then?
So what we're gonna do, with birds, people commonly do something that's called a brine.
Okay.
A brine is that you're gonna take salt and water and spices and mix it together, and then submerge the meat in that.
So what's the point of that?
It's gonna surround the meat with these flavors. That's gonna, through the osmosis process, just start to absorb those flavors and make it so that you get a really juicy, flavorful meat.
Sounds delicious.
What we're gonna do today, however, is not that method.
So if we're not going to brine this turkey, how are we going to season it?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover it like a rub.
Okay.
But not like rubs that I would do with ribs or with maybe with a steak or maybe with a tri-tip. It's going to more mimic this idea of the brine and surrounding it with salt without adding too much moisture.
Okay, excellent. So the bird has enough moisture in it already?
The bird should have enough moisture in it already.
Okay.
It should, and most importantly, that if we have the temperature right when we're cooking tomorrow, and that's consistent, we shouldn't have any fears of drying out.
Okay.
That's really the issue. That if we make it too hot and we go too hot and too short, it's not going to cook all the way through.
Beautiful.
Which is not good.
Beautiful.
But if we decide that we make it too low, then it's going to take a really long time.
Yeah.
So we're going to find that really good medium temperature to keep it consistent so that it doesn't dry out and it's cooked all the way through.
And so are we going to then utilize the rub for the spice and the flavor, or are we looking for the smoke to provide the flavor?
Both.
Both,
We
okay.
really want it to be both. But the way that I smoke was different than a lot of people. A lot of methods you're going to see, they're going to smoke for really long times. You know, people who smoke for 8, 10, 12 hours.
Right. You see that on the competition channels.
I've been wanting to get in with some of those competition guys, but I don't think I can because I don't like their method. I don't like their method because I think it's too much smoke and you start losing the flavor of the meat. And that matters to me.
Sure.
So I'm a kind of a 4 or 5 hour smoke guy.
Sure.
Anything more than that, I'm just afraid I'm going to stop being able to taste that meat.
Well, and you got a job, kids, family. You can't give up 8 hours in a day.
Who's got time for that, right? It's way too much time. You're absolutely right. But I think that what's really crucial here is that I know that I put in some effort to come up with a rub. I want to taste that too.
Sure.
If you have done one of those 8 to 10 hour smokes, I would suggest just doing salt and pepper because your flavor is really the smoke.
Yeah.
But if you're going to come up with some sort of creative blend, then figure out that right amount of time in smoking it where you've cooked it, it's tender, it's flavorful, but you get to taste the smoke and you taste the rub.
Sure. So you can pick what's right for you, right? You can pick the rub that you want, you can pick the smoke flavor that you want, or you can combine the two like what we're going to do for this turkey.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Without a doubt.
Beautiful.
Because likewise, if we went for a long smoke, that turkey breast is going to be dried out.
Yeah.
I would suggest if you wanted to go with a whole bird, which is its own challenge, then you're going to want to do something that's a little bit longer.
Okay.
But I would also then suggest a couple fewer flavors.
Sure.
So that it really is about the smoke and making sure that it's cooked all the way through. But the reason why I just do turkey breasts is to stay in my rhythm, in my philosophy, because with that size of a bird, I can control the temperature and I can cook it without overcooking it at just the amount of time that I want to do.
Sounds delicious.
So here we are with the bird.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is to make sure that we're thawed, but at the same time making sure they weren't too warm. So this is my infrared thermometer. And you can pick this up at any hardware store, very reasonably priced. And I love using it for this moment and also within the cooking. I make sure that I've changed the batteries pretty frequently. I'll run tests on myself to know that it's the right temperature, and you can see that it's pretty close to what you'd expect yourself to be. I'll run it like just of what is the average temperature in the house, and then I'll know it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and take the temperature of the bird. And it looks like the bird is about 43 degrees, which is great because we know that we're not in that danger zone. It's pretty close to what it would be in a refrigerator.
Yeah,
So
you said 40 degrees in a refrigerator
exactly.
earlier. So
Pretty close. And so if you touch it too, you're like, okay, that's cool, which is great. So next thing we got to do is time to open this up and release the liquid. Now what's releasing here is just the basically already an existent brine that the meat packing companies put together to keep the meat consistent and moist. The problem with these things is that potentially it's too much moisture, but that's another story altogether. So let's just release the liquid. This is just gravy that they provide you, which we're not going to use today. There's all that liquid.
look at that turkey breast coming out too. That just looks nice, doesn't it?
It's nice. It's real nice. No ice in that liquid, so that means we're just where we want to be. It's not too cold still, because this water is real cold as it comes across my hand, but it's not. It's definitely not icy. So I'm going to go ahead and transition this to a paper towel to help for drying next. Remember what I'd said before about how you want that skin to be crispy, and so you don't want it to be too wet. So we're gonna pat this dry before we add the rub to it.
So this is just like you were talking about with the brine. You didn't want the brine making it super moist on the outside on the skin. So then we're gonna pat it dry here, even though we're not using a brine.
Absolutely. You want to have me a couple more paper towels? We're gonna get this a little bit more dry. So what we should be thinking about at this point is, how are we gonna cook this bird? That's a pretty important question.
Oh, I got some ideas. What do you think?
Well, I've done it a couple of different ways. One way is going to require a little bit more labor at this point, which is something, but it's not necessarily what we're looking for.
Okay.
That method is called spatchcocking.
Okay. Tell me about spatchcocking.
So spatchcocking, you're going to take the backbone out, and then you're going to take the breastbone out, or the keel bone out of the bird here, and then you're going to be able to lay it flat.
Okay.
And the reason why you want it to lay flat is that if it's flat, it's going to be even cook.
It's almost like butterfly and a pork chop.
Exactly. It's going to be an even cook because it's all the same density, it's all the same size, and it works.
Okay.
It's generally my usual preferred method. What I like to do with that is I'll spatchcock the bird, and then I'll lay it right on the top of my little Smoky Joe kettle smoker.
Okay.
And then it really covers the whole surface area.
Okay.
The problem with that method, however, is that it blocks the air moving around. And so it's hard to keep a consistent temperature, it's hard to keep a consistent fire.
Well, if we're using a smoke, we're going to want that smoke and that air circulating in there to encompass everything.
Absolutely. So what I'm thinking is that I'd like to try something different this time.
Okay.
I think this is a good chance for us to use my rotisserie. And then we know that air can move around in it consistently. And so I think that we don't need to take this back out today, and we should just move in the direction of adding the dry brine or the rub today.
I have no problem with rotisserie turkey or rotisserie chicken, so let's do that.
I hope it'll taste good. That's for sure. So here we go. I feel like this is pretty good, pretty well patted dry, which is great. And now,
So after we pat it dry, what's our next step?
we're going to take this bird and we're going to move it. Well, before we move it, we're going to have one more thing we should do.
Okay.
And that is I'm going to dig in here and I'm going to loosen the skin. And the reason why I'm going to loosen the skin is to help with that process of trying to make sure that I get that crispy skin that I want. Because if the skin is still right on top of the meat, then it's going to have trouble. It's going to have trouble drying out.
Well, you burn a little bit of that meat too, and you're looking to crisp the skin without burning that meat.
Exactly. And so this is going to make it so that the fat that's under the skin is going to release, and then we're going to be able to keep this turkey really good and moist from the release of that fat, while simultaneously creating that crispy skin that just tastes better. So there we go. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, consistent all the way around. It's a lot easier with, this is something you want to do with any bird. This is something you want to do with chickens. It's something you definitely want to do when doing duck That's for sure as well.
And this is that moment where you just got to get your hands dirty. There's no other option.
There is
to
no
it,
option.
right?
So you just want to make sure that you have really good, clean hands and that you have made good decisions up until this point. So it is time to move this turkey. Well, now it's time for us to put that dry brine together.
Okay. What's in our dry brine today?
So the most important thing in any brine is salt. So we have salt. We have just the right amount of salt to keep things balanced and make sure that we're going to get the amount of flavor that we want without overburdening the flavor with just salt. Additionally, we have some brown sugar to add a little sweetness to the brine. I have black peppercorns, green peppercorns, and white peppercorns, allspice, thyme, and sage.
So where do you get all these? Do you just go to the store and say, hey, I want my dry brine rub?
That's a great question. So the herbs are my herbs. I have a pretty good sized herb garden where I grow my own stuff. And then during the season and the summer and into the fall, I make sure that I cut it, dry it, so that I can use it through the winter.
Sure.
Which naturally leads into a really important question. So why would I do dry herbs instead of fresh herbs? Mm-hmm. Well, fresh herbs is going to just bring more moisture to this.
Okay.
So for the brining process, I prefer to use dry herbs.
So how long do you go from harvest to use to dry that out?
So it usually takes about 3 or 4 days for it to dry out, especially here living at altitude.
So they're still pretty fresh. They're not sitting in a cabinet for 2 years or
not at all.
I have my little spice cabinet down below that everything sits in.
Yeah.
I have no idea how long it's been there.
I think that you can really tell that by looking at the color.
Okay.
You can see how green the thyme is, and you see the color of the sage. It's not that old. You can see that it's really the natural color of it. It hasn't gotten too dried out. And likewise, if you take the time to smell it, then if you can see how strong the smell is. Because you're right, spices and herbs, they don't last forever. And once you those volatile oils that really give the smell and the flavor that we're trying to get out of this, if it's too old, they've been released and they're not worth anything.
So all those expiration dates that you see on the bottom of your spice bottle, follow them, use them. They're real. Not like everything else, but like those, it's real.
I totally agree with you. There's a lot of products out there where they give you an expiration date where I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
But with spices and herbs, I think it does.
Sure.
Some I would suggest like every 6 months. There's some things that can last as much as a year. It all depends. Things that are really salt-based, their shelf life is forever.
Okay.
Any of the smoked salt that we talked about before, regular salt or sea salt that you would buy, it's going to last forever.
Okay.
The salt really makes sure it preserves it.
And if you don't have a spice garden, just go into the grocery store. It's fine. You can get all these things there. This is an everyday brine, or everyday rub that we can use anytime we want, and you just collect your own.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And it's going to be the same thing. This is just what I have.
Sure.
And it's going to be just as good. But I would suggest not getting any herbs that have already been ground down to a powder.
Okay.
I think that those are going to lose some of the flavor, and although we're going to turn this into a powder, we have control over it.
Sure.
It's happening at our timeline.
Sure. Great.
So what we're going to do in order to keep the parts in the size that we're seeking and blend it well is we're going to start with the biggest things and then move to the smallest things.
Makes sense.
So what we're going to do is we're going to add the allspice and the peppercorns and the herbs first.
Now, do you grind that all up first?
Mm-hmm. We're going to grind it up. We're going to grind it up in the blender really quickly, and then we're going to add the salt and the sugar, and it should be just where we want it to be, where we haven't over blended the ingredients. Now, everybody's got a different kind of blender. You want to, with this method, we're just going to go at the lower speeds just to break it up a little bit. We're not going to completely pulverize it to being too much.
Okay.
So here we go.
Would a food processor work?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about doing that, but my wife Steph got this attachment recently for her Vitamix, and I decided I wanted to give it a spin and see if I liked it.
Perfect.
But a lot of food processors are going to have a smaller container on top that would be perfect for this application.
Okay. Great.
And even if you don't, it'll work just fine. But make sure I would suggest making sure you use the metal blade which would work well too. What I've also done in the past is that I had a smaller, older coffee grinder that was no longer using for coffee, that I was using for a spice blend as well.
Okay, great.
So here we go.
I can smell the allspice for sure. The cinnamon, the nutmeg piece, right? The peppercorns I can smell. I can't wait to taste it. This is gonna be great.
So take a look at it too, Adam. So it looks like when you get like garlic powder or onion powder, it's pretty well pulverized, right?
Yep.
And that makes a difference for knowing that you're going to cover this bird completely and thoroughly, and making sure that every corner of this bird is going to be well flavored.
So one technique I've seen people do is they actually want it a little bit wet so the herbs and the spices stick. Is that something you do?
Not with this method.
Okay.
And that's because of how long we're going to leave it with it on there. Because the moisture and some of the moisture in the bird is going to be released.
Okay.
Because right now it's actually wetter than it would be naturally.
Okay.
Because of how much it's been surrounded by that brine in its frozen state.
So the natural wetness will already cover that. We don't need to add any more
Absolutely.
liquid. Perfect.
But we are going to add another liquid, but not until tomorrow when we actually do the smoking.
Okay.
And that liquid's going to be oil.
Okay.
We'll add oil to it right before we actually go to the grill to help to get to that crispiness.
So that brings out a nice crisp, doesn't it?
That's what we're looking for. So here we go. Time to just start adding the brine, the dry brine rub to the bird. So you got to make sure you move it around a little bit so that it doesn't just end up being in one place.
Right.
And that's something else that we're not going to be able to see is that before I go to bed tonight, I'm going to turn this around a couple of times. And when I get up in the morning, I'm going to turn it around again to make sure that all of this has been really well covered and absorbed all the flavors that we worked so hard to put together with this brine.
Otherwise, you just end up with that one lucky guest that gets the juicy brine
absolutely.
piece.
And then what, right? That's not what we're looking for.
That's your friend that keeps coming back.
That's
right.
right.
They love your smoked turkey.
That is my good friend Susie who loves the turkey. That is her favorite. Oh goodness, that was a little bit more than we were hoping to do, but that's okay. That's just fine because of how this method works. That we're gonna make it so that you can see that the brine is already wet on the bottom because of the release from this bird. So I'm going to turn this around a little bit more and get it all the way up on top again. But I feel pretty good about it being well covered. That's for sure. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and soon on our YouTube channel.